Hi guys, Laura Parker from GameSpot here. I'm sitting down with Thom Kozik, the Executive Vice President of Atari, who's going to talk a little bit about Atari GO and social gaming strategy. Thanks for joining us, Thom.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Okay, let's kick off with your role at Atari, what you currently do, and a little bit of background about your video game history past.
Right. Well, I run the online, mobile, and casual gaming business at Atari. So, we've got a great legacy, having, really invented the video game business, as well as, by any measure, what today we would consider a casual game as part of Atari's core legacy. But over the years, as Atari grew and changed the corporate structure, we now are, the owners of a library of over 1,000 great pieces of some of the greatest games in history, and as well as a whole bunch of new games, Star Trek Online, Ghostbusters, and others. So it's a fun library to be able to work with and take into this new space.
Now, Thom, you're a close personal friend of Nolan Bushnell, the founding father of Atari. What's it like coming into Atari at this stage and working with Nolan to bring back Atari into the video game industry now?
Well, there's two parts of it. One is, on a very personal level, having grown up with Atari, to be entrusted with doing the kind of things we're doing now with the brand is just mind-blowing, and it's a tremendous amount of fun. The second part of being Nolan's friend and seeing the same excitement, and the excitement of a young man in his eyes, to watch that is phenomenal. What's even more interesting is when we bring Nolan into a lot of the design discussions, we bring in a different game developer who gets to work with our intellectual property, be it an old classic Atari arcade game or maybe something from the more recent past, and to have Nolan involved in those design sessions is the icing on the cake for those developers, to have someone with his insight and his perspective on game design involved in what we're doing. It's just phenomenal.
Okay, now you guys have just unveiled Atari GO. Can you give us a very brief rundown of what GO is and what you plan to do?
So what GO is, it's the name we apply to the initiative, which runs everything from a developer program to let developers come in, work with us on the intellectual property, bring them onto the platform. It's in the center really a stack of shared platform and services, which is everything from the technological underpinnings, hosting, the APIs, reference tools, to be able to run the game on our back end, merchant services, as well as software services like QA, customer service that we provide, and on the other side, it's affiliate programs for how do we get our games. Then, of course, Yahoo, we can bring games to a Yahoo or an MSN or a Facebook or any of the other major portals easily. But how do we also take it out to thousands and thousands of smaller game sites along with that? What we found is that there's a little bit of a fallacy that anybody with a great idea can become a publisher, and it can become self-publisher. And certainly the social network explosion drove a lot of that belief. When you really get below the covers, though, the truth is there's a lot of work around understanding how to tap into a number of different monetization tools. How do you localize that game across multiple languages and multiple continents? How do you take the customer service equation into part of the process? There's a lot of work there to becoming a publisher of games. And while we see in the press all the time the great stories about some guy who built a great game, put it up on Facebook, and is now enjoying all the success, to take that to the next level takes a lot of resources and people. And that's where, now that the role of a publisher has fundamentally changed in this online casual gaming world, that's where we can add value. Somebody of our scale is to help take care of all that back-end operation for a publisher or for a studio.
So why are you choosing the casual, social, mobile market for Atari's comeback as opposed to, say, AAA console titles?
Well, we never left the AAA business. We still have a number of big titles. I mean, Test Drive Unlimited 2 is coming out in January. That's one of our great racing titles, and it's socialized and online as well, but it's a console title. So you'll always see us staying in that market. I mean, that's the core of our business. But we can engage around all the content that people love and these brands that people remember forever on all these social network platforms and on the mobile platform in such a broader way. Plus, you look at the economics of the industry changing itself. To field those big tentpole titles takes a lot of effort, a lot of cash resources, and we can have a lot more fun trying our hand and taking risks in ways that we couldn't if that was our only business. So we can field a whole number of games in a number of different areas and see which works best. And all those games, particularly in the casual, social, online, and mobile space, are being done by third-party studios and third-party developers. We're not going to try to corner the market on creativity inside Atari. We want to tap into that creativity that's already out there.
Okay, now you've mentioned previously there's a lot of knockoff Atari games, social games kind of floating around, and you've mentioned that you are going to approach these companies and replace the knockoff product with the original. Have you started to do this, and if so, how have the companies responded so far?
Well, the response has been great. First of all, when they realized that we're not coming knocking at the door with an army of lawyers in tow. These are our fans. They love these games. They remember these games for many, many years gone by. But again, a lot of people have created these games and they've created imitations, and we're honored by that. It's nice to be imitated. But we can actually put the official version of the game in place, and we've gone to these affiliate sites, and we've gone to these small publishers, and sometimes it's somebody with nothing more than a machine in their basement and running a game site or a game blog, and they've embedded these games. To go to them and say, look, you can actually run the official version from Atari, and we'll share in the revenue together. That's an offer that has been made to them before, and so the response has been phenomenal. It's been very positive.
Okay, great. Now, part of the Go initiative is bringing in a lot of indie developers and allowing them to work on old Atari IP. Down the track, is there a plan to allow these developers to start creating their own original IP, just publishing it under the Atari brand?
Yeah, and actually the first game we launched under Go, almost for that reason, was a game called Fairies vs. Darklings. It was a new game brought to us by a third-party developer. We've got a lot of classic re-envisionings of IP coming out, but we want to have a good mix of original IP in there as well. There's so many great new ideas. So we'll have both a balance of reimaginings and completely new IP in the mix as part of what we're greenlighting in the Go process.
And on that note, what's your personal opinion about the importance of indie developers in the current game industry?
Well, it's critical. It's where all the great creativity comes from. Time and time again, we've seen large publishers and large studios, and at times in Atari's previous incarnations in the past, where you acquire a lot of the new studios or a lot of indie developers, and you have to be careful because often that active acquisition can stifle the very creativity you think you're buying. So we're looking at, and these models, the Go initiative is modeled on so much of what we've learned from watching how internet businesses grow in and of themselves. And by opening up APIs and opening the doors for people to participate with you as a business, brings that creativity to the table and keeps it fresh.
What's your opinion of the general gaming industry at the moment? Where do you think it's headed? And do you think that the gaming industry at the moment, does it crave and need new gaming experiences? Or are we okay to just keep falling back on big blockbuster AAA titles and sequels and things like that?
Well, the great thing about the big blockbuster AAA sequels is that there's a built-in audience. That audience, though, does shift its taste as time goes by. The excitement around Move and Connect in terms of gesture-based gaming, building on what the Wii showed us was possible, it's phenomenal. There's so much fun we're going to have as an industry with doing completely new paradigms around those kind of platforms. And couple that with what we know now about social and the social power of gaming, not just around 4 people gathered around the television, but thousands of people gathered together in a particular game room, which isn't necessarily tied to the traditional MMO model of us walking around a virtual world. As we've seen on the socialized games on platforms like Facebook and High Five and others, we can interact at a massive scale and just do it casually or just through nothing more than a web browser. So what's interesting is I don't think there's any one game industry model. There's many models within this industry, and we're in a wave right now where we're seeing again this tremendous monetization and creativity surge in the online and social space. Some of those are being called casual. Some of those games are anything but casual, and we're seeing the same true in mobile. What was considered almost cute in the mobile space, or the mobile gaming space was almost considered cute a few years ago. Now you're seeing tools like Epic's engine and John Carmack's engine, the Rage engine, showing up there. It's phenomenal what we're going to be able to do on a mobile platform in a very short amount of time. We've got to keep it in context, though. The way I play on a mobile device is different than what I play on a console, and different from my expectations in front of a PC.
Now let's talk a little bit about audiences. If we go back to social gaming, I think a lot of core gamers don't see social gaming as an opportunity. They see it as a threat almost, and I guess it's easy to see why. But how can we turn that around? Do you think that social games will become more complex, or do you think that core games will become less complex? As a Warcraft player myself, I don't see how anybody can be a hardcore gamer like that and say it's not social when you think about how you
put together your guild and how you communicate with everyone else in the game anyway. Of course, those games that are inherently social. That's what makes them the massively multiplayer. There's always going to be, in any social structure, whether it's gaming or anything else in life, there's always going to be the people who think, well, this is our group and you're in a part of another group. And that's true in gaming, whether it's social to traditional console or hardcore PC players. But clearly, you look at the quality of gameplay and the gameplay dynamics and the curve it's been on just in the last 2 years online in a browser-based game, it's phenomenally changed. I mean, we went from what some people have called statistics with strangers of the database-driven games on a social network to rich, deep, really engaging social games in those browsers. It's exciting what we're going to see in another 2 years. I wouldn't even try to predict what it's going to look like in 2 years. All I know is it's definitely still on an accelerating curve.
And Atari's going to go down the social gaming path.
Absolutely. There's no, that's where the audience is that already knows us and loves us. And particularly when you look at the demographics of the audience in social gaming, it's an audience that has a lot of relevance with Atari and the brand and some of those classic intellectual property titles that we have. And to be able to bring these new titles we talked about from the indie developers and show that to the audience just helps us.
Now, what do you think the importance of something like digital distribution is in the current model of how the video game industry works right now? Where do you see that headed, and things like episodic content and downloadable content and things like that? Do you see that kind of taking over as the major way that we will distribute video games in the future?
Well, I think it dovetails nicely with what we're talking about with online, right? Browser-based gaming. We've always had great success, and we're going to see more and more of it with downloadable content for all of our games that we do in the traditional console space and the PC space. We've got great distribution partners like Steam and others for doing digital distribution. So it's a big part of our business already, but knowing that we can bring additional content and extend the lifespan of a game. So it becomes less about a release and more about a service. So it really is about the transition to games as a service versus games as products.
Okay. And what are your opinions? You touched on this lightly, the motion control wave that's coming, Kinect, Move and stuff. How do you think that will kind of shape the way games are made?
Well, it's interesting. I think it, much like when we went to a graphical user interface, I've been in the tech industry long enough to remember these transitions. But it changed the nature by which we consider how people interact. And touch has now done that. Touch interfaces such as the smartphones, like the Apple devices and the iPad and others, are changing the way people think about what to do with an interface and how to change the interaction between a consumer and the underlying technology. I think we're probably, if history's any teacher, it's probably about 2 years before we really start to see some of the most innovative stuff come out of gesture-based gaming, where we really see what that platform allows us to do.
And final question: when can we see some titles from the Atari GO program? What's the kind of timeline?
Well, the first one went up a few weeks ago. We have a beta version of Fairies vs. Darklings, which is a traditional puzzler with a nice, added meta game above it where you have to save the forest. That was the first Go-based game that we put up. And then you'll see also coming attractions up on the site right now for Asteroids Online and Deer Hunter Online. So you can actually get a sample, play one of them, and get samples of the others that are coming shortly and going into beta probably by the time this gets online.
Right. Thank you so much for your time, Tom.
Thank you. Appreciate it.